Hello and welcome back to the Chargers Check-In. My name is Cecilia and today we're going to talk about the best guards of the 2026 NFL Draft. Now obviously there's a lot of time before the draft, a lot can change between now and then, and there are definitely some guys on the rise who didn't quite make this list. But there are some exciting names here both in the context of what the Chargers need and in the NFL in general. So when we evaluate guards, something you have to think about is there are a lot more guards available than a lot of other positions just because every team has two starting guards, and then some tackles are going to be great in college, but don't have the traits for that to translate to the NFL. And so then you project them inside to guard or inside to center. And so you just end up with a really vast pool of talent to evaluate. So I definitely appreciate those of you who left names on my center video for more guys that I need to check out. I'm hoping that I can get the same thing going here. Obviously, I talked a bit about how we evaluate players in the centers video, but just to remind you guys, the first thing you look at is how do they play against the toughest competition? How do they play in the biggest games? Obviously, playoff games matter the most, but there's also something to be said about rivalry games, schools that they used to play for, things like that. And then, of course, you're looking at their physical traits and projecting how is that going to translate to the NFL. Progression over the years, you want to see them get better, play a bigger role on the team, maybe develop some leadership, and of course, character. You want guys who are good on and off the field so that you don't have locker room problems, so that you don't have guys getting suspended, missing games. Another big factor for guards in particular is versatility. Can they play on the left and right? Can they also play center? Can they, in a pinch, play tackle? Then you're looking at a nice developmental backup guard and backup tackle. That can just make your roster that much more efficient. I think for the offensive line, when you can only have 8 or 9 offensive linemen active on game day, you're going to want to make sure that multiple players on that line can play multiple positions, and that's something that you got to value in the guard position especially. Let's get into the best guard prospects for the 2026 NFL Draft as of right now. So I'm going to start with the name a lot of you guys already have heard, a lot of you guys know. He is definitely projected to go in the first round. Oliva Yon. He is number 71, the left guard of Penn State. He's 6'4", 330 pounds. This is a player who didn't start playing football until his sophomore year of high school. He was one of 9 kids, and it was a family that just focused more on academics. But as he got older, obviously he had the traits to be a great offensive lineman. I had the chance to watch a lot of his high school tape, and it is remarkable. I used to edit tape of high school football players with NCSA, and I can tell you, you don't see tape like that often. Even among the higher star recruits, you do not see tape like that often, where he seemingly effortlessly is just knocking guys over with one hand, pancakes all over the place. He's absolutely incredible. So obviously he had the traits. I thought he was really solid against Indiana, which Indiana has a solid defensive line. I think they're great competition in the Big Ten and obviously a highly ranked team. And even as Penn State has, not done so well this year, James Franklin got fired and you have a lot of turmoil in that organization, not the year they wanted to have, he has remained consistent. Great mobility for his size, really fast on poles. Sometimes he struggles to run block at the second level. He might whiff a little bit, but he has the mobility that's something that can improve. Sometimes they line him up as a tight end or a halfback because when this guy gets in motion, he is an unstoppable force for anyone on defense because of his size, because of his strength. Those are the kind of traits that you combine them with mobility, and he's dangerous. He showed a really strong anchor against Ohio State, which obviously is the best college team in the country right now. Even though it wasn't his best game, he was never pushed backwards. He recovers really well when he's beat off of the jump. He handles bull rushers remarkably well, and that's a big deal because that's something that will translate to the NFL really well. Obviously with speed rushers, it's like no one in college is doing what NFL faster, more athletic defensive ends and defensive tackles are doing, but there are 300-something pound guys that you're going to have to go up against, and he does really well at Penn State. Overall, I think he's a great prospect. He has a high enough IQ that I think you could be comfortable projecting him as a starter, as a rookie. To me, this is a floor raiser. This is an instant impact, especially on the run game. Immediately brings stability to an interior of an offensive line, especially because he has shown, even if everyone around him is struggling, he is not going to struggle. He is going to be who he is. He's going to be consistent. And I think any team that gets him should be very excited to do so. He's not a perfect prospect. None of these guys are. That's something we have to remember. There's so much hype around this guy. It is worth noting that he struggles against the faster 3 techniques at sometimes, definitely needs some technical refinement. He doesn't always get the best leverage in pass protection, which isn't great to see. His hands are sometimes late at the point of attack. He's kind of average against stunts and blitzes. I didn't see anything particularly amazing there. That's definitely going to be an adjustment at the next level where defenses are doing much more complicated things. And yet, 2 pressures allowed in the 2025 season. That's pretty insane. That's a wild thing. Look at Penn State's list of opponents and tell me that's not a crazy stat. He's a raw prospect, but he's already productive. That is an immensely high ceiling and a pretty much guarantee of a high floor if you can handle him right, which is always the big if, right? To me, this is someone who he's definitely going to go in the first round. It's well deserved. He should go in the first round. And, if your team takes this guy in the first round, you should understand it's not an exciting pick. It's not flashy to pick a guard in the first round, but whatever team he goes to, they would have to do something seriously wrong for him to not work out reasonably well as a rookie in the NFL. So, I thought I'd start with that guy because that's a name you guys keep bringing up. But he's definitely not the only exciting one. Emanuel Pregnon from Oregon is the next guy I want to talk about. Number 75, he's a left guard, 6'5", 318 pounds. He transferred to USC from Wyoming in 2023 and then transferred to Oregon for the 2025 season. He's a very physical run blocker, awesome at the second level. Love to see that. That really opens up the playbook and the run game. Everything about him is physical. There are plays where you see him deliver a hit to, just taking a quick look at this 275-pound tackle, that's not easy to come by. Everything this guy does is physical. He has a great anchor against those really big nose tackles. He is impossible to bull rush, excellent grip strength, and again, those are things that translate really well to the NFL level. My issue with him is he has 7 penalties this season, and that's too many. That's discipline isn't going to get easier in the NFL. I think a lot of the time it can be coached a little more attentively, but that's something that, at least for the Chargers, there are way too many penalties on the offensive line, and so that makes me nervous about that. Sometimes he struggles with balance on run plays that prevent him from sustaining blocks, even though he has the physical traits to do it. He's often leaning forward, and sometimes that leads to pancakes, and it's great. It's the same thing, though, that at other times leads to him getting pushed off of a defender and, like I said, not being able to sustain blocks. He doesn't always hold up against the most athletic defensive tackles in pass protection, which suggests that that's going to kind of be a process for him in the NFL in that regard. He had a great game versus USC, despite 3 backups around him on the offensive line. Watching him this weekend, it's like this offensive line, which had become a real strength for Oregon, so many of those guys are injured now, but he still managed to be steady. He still managed to play his game. You could see on the broadcast even, he's helping call protections. He's not just leaving it to the backup center that's in there. He's clearly being a leader on that team when they needed him to be. And I know that this is someone a lot of you guys are excited for. To me, I understand that there are a lot of first-round grades for him. I don't quite see that for me. I think I would have a low-end second round, maybe high-end third round. Obviously, there's a lot of time for this to change, but to me, this is a developmental prospect with starting upside. He absolutely could be a starter by the end of his rookie year. To me, there's a lot that needs to be ironed out. He has all the traits. He has all the potential. At the right program, he is going to be amazing, especially for the Chargers. I don't know that I believe in their ability to develop offensive linemen enough that this is a kind of prospect that I would want to take a high pick on. And, I do want to remind people, because I've seen a lot of people say, like, we have to go offensive line first round and second round and maybe third round. And to that I say, we really don't. Just because something is the most important position doesn't mean that you need to be picking it in the order of importance. You need to pick things based on value. There may be fantastic defensive tackles available in round 1, 2, and 3, and then pretty much no one available in round 5, depending on how things fall. That's just an example, but you don't want to decide before the draft, before anything happens, we are going to take this position in this round, and then we're going to take this position in this round. You can have a plan for how different things fall, and you should. That's the point of having a big board, but don't think that there aren't guard prospects later that are worth taking and could be a starter next year. So, I know it's not super exciting for me to start off by, Yone is a first round pick and the next guy really isn't, but just keep in mind, there will be good guards available a little bit later. Next guy I want to talk about is Brian Parker from Duke. He is the right tackle, but I personally would project him to be a guard or a center at the NFL level. He has a great anchor. He refuses to get pushed back. That really is the theme that rose out for the guard prospects that I like, because I think that translates the most reliably. And usually, if you're drafting a guard in one of the first few rounds, you're looking for reliability. Because if you had reliability in your line, there are more exciting positions you'd probably be looking to take. But this guy, look, he's quick on his feet, good hands, good mobility. He has everything he needs to be effective in any scheme. Again, that's that versatility we've talked about. I think that's really important. He might be seen as a potential center just because he's smart. He can identify blitzes and what the defense is doing, and that's pretty clear on tape. And, it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a guard who can be moved over. Clearly the Chargers value that with what they did with Zion. Like, clearly, they want to make the most out of the intelligence of their prospects, and that makes a lot of sense. He gets more penalties than I would like, but I think that has to do with his tendency to grab rather than punch. Both are viable styles, but if you're going to be someone who, grabs the jersey of the defensive tackle, you really have to know when to let go. That you really have to, and you cannot afford to mess that up. And that's something that he messes up sometimes. The reason I mention that is I think that can be coached out. At the right NFL team for him is going to coach that out of him. He can be beat by speed on the outside, but I really like his recovery ability. Plus that's, that would be mitigated by playing in the interior. He would be playing with someone on the outside of him. And that's another reason I think he projects a lot higher as a guard than he does as a tackle. He's not some insane mauler in the run game. So he's probably a later round pick. I would guess maybe the 5th round. I could see teams really liking what he does and, ending up picking him a little bit sooner. As of right now, I wouldn't want him before the 5th round, but I think he has great value. I think he would take a developmental portion of the year, but I absolutely think he could evolve into a starter at the NFL level. There was a rumor I saw that a Chargers scout has been attending Duke games specifically to watch him. I haven't seen any evidence that they're watching him in particular. That is most likely just speculation. Do with it what you will, but I certainly thought he was worth mentioning. The next prospect is probably the one that I am the most excited about. I'm going to understand the hesitation about this guy because he has a bit of an injury history, but Chase Basantis at Texas A&M, number 71. He's 6'6", 315, would fit right into that Chargers offensive line with how big he is. Like I said, because of the injuries, more limited tape, and I think he would be getting a lot of the hype that Vega is getting. But when you're not able to play, a lot less tape, a lot less opportunities to stand out. He had this rep against Notre Dame where the entire pocket collapses except for him. Like everyone is at the quarterback, taking him down together at once. But him and his guy are completely separate. And, if you know anything about Notre Dame, they win in the trenches. So that's an impressive performance to me. If you're going to watch any game of his, definitely watch his versus Notre Dame. You can actually find the whole game on the Notre Dame's YouTube channel. They have a lot of that melt footage where you can see the slow motion, you can see from behind, you can get a good sense of what the offensive line is doing. What I like about him, excellent on pull blocks, running game really moves around him. He absorbs power rushers, excellent at passing off rushers to other blockers and then picking up another guy, excellent at picking up late blitzers. I think he does a great job of redirecting 3 techniques that are able to beat him with speed and keep them vertical so that they can't actually get after the quarterback. That's, kind of an underrated skill is when you get beat, what does it look like? How bad is it? That's something that he impressed me with. The effort is outstanding. He blocks through the whistle, sprints to the play after a pass, even though he is very unlikely to get involved. The kind of player that makes defenses give up a bit. And I think that's really valuable. He really shines in short yardage situations and at the goal line. Like I said, he doesn't get pushed back, and that's something that I think a lot of teams are looking at. Like, you have value in pass protection and run blocking in general and getting to the second level and pulls and mobility. But what about when you just need 1 yard? Can you run to his gaps? Like, can you run to his side of the line and reliably get 1 yard? And that's something I think you could ask of him. And some he'll deliver on. He does struggle a bit in pass protection in a technical sense. His hand placement was the biggest concern coming into college, and I have not seen him improve that a whole lot. You could, kind of say what you will about that. You could interpret that as a coaching problem. You could interpret that as a coachability problem. However you interpret that, is likely a reflection of what you think of your NFL team's coaches. It's a little concerning to me because I don't very much believe in the Chargers offensive line coaching department right now. Could be different next year. I personally hope it is. Because of these inconsistencies in pass protection, to me, this is a developmental prospect, but with a huge upside. Like, let's be clear, a huge upside. Has all the traits, very smart, excellent in the run game, like I said. I think he's going to be drafted by a team that can afford to be patient, because if you can afford to be patient, I think this could be a high-end starter in the NFL. I just think it'll take a couple years. For the Chargers, they might see him as a swing guard. That's something I mentioned that the Chargers do need. They need depth, and if you can afford to, take a higher-end pick on a depth piece and then set yourself up with free agency so he doesn't have to start right away, but if somebody goes down, and on the offensive line, we know people go down a lot, you have someone that you can be confident is going to get a lot of value from those reps, and who, if you play your cards right, he'll be a great starter in a few years. So I think he could be available as late as the 4th round. It wouldn't shock me if at the combine he just does well enough and shoots up the chart. But as of right now, I think he would be a fantastic value pick, and I'd be really excited to see him on the Chargers. All right, the next player I want to talk about is another tackle that I'm projecting to guard. This is Caleb Tieran from Northwestern. Number 72, 6'7", 325 pounds. This is a redshirt senior. He has to declare. Don't let Northwestern being not the best football team fool you about this guy. He had offers from Ohio State, from Penn State, from Michigan, and he chose to go to Northwestern out of high school. He was a dual sport athlete. He was a captain of his basketball team, captain of the football team. He had a breakout season after redshirting his first year at right tackle. And then in 2023, he switched to left tackle and allowed 1 sack in the entire year. And, I've talked about Vega allowed 2 pressures only all year, but understand that allowing 1 sack from left tackle is, that is an equally impressive stat. That's a really hard thing to do at a Big Ten school. He's one of the most interesting prospects to me, kind of a weird profile of a guy. He's so athletic in pass protection, easily handles stunts and blitzes, never looks lost, never looks confused, always looks like he knows what's going on. Head and shoulders better than his teammates around him, both in terms of performance and in terms of how well he's reading the defense and what's happening. He's great on an island, and usually he has to be. With that line, he's not the one getting the help. There was a play where it was a quick pass to the flat, and he barely displaces the guy in front of him before taking off to hit his mark, and because of that, the ball carrier wasn't able to cut in and get past the guy that he initially hit. And so it's like, okay, on one hand, sure, the play design's not great, but not great execution on that, not great awareness. He has plays like this, but then in pass protection, he looks unbelievably comfortable. And so there's this kind of disconnect between the more complicated aspects of the short passing game and run game that Northwestern tries to do versus dropping back and passing, the level of his performance. And like I said, he's really smart at handling defenses, handling blitzes. And so it's surprising to me that it doesn't translate to all aspects of his game. Everything to do with the run game for him is so inconsistent. On one hand, he might seal the edge perfectly and set up a big run, and then the next play he looks really uncomfortable, and he is a rare offensive lineman that it looks like he would rather drop back in pass protection than push forward in the run game. Not a very common trait. Like I said, a lot of these guys that I'm talking about, they're maulers. They want to push forward. They want to pancake. They want to take guys down. This guy just wants to keep it all in front of him, and, he's not afraid to drop back. It's hard to get by him. You can tell when you watch this tape, you're like, oh yeah, that's a basketball player. The footwork is incredible. The way he shifts his weight and can move so smoothly. Most offensive linemen do not look like that. Really impressive. It's just not consistent. And to me, that's why I'm projecting him as a guard. I think you can get away with being a slightly worse run blocker as a guard than as a tackle, because outside runs really require someone who can seal the edge. And you just have to believe he'd be better in the run game with guys on both sides of him, but Northwestern they needed someone who could be on an island in pass protection, and that's what he is. You just can't be a tackle at the NFL level if you can't consistently at least hold your own in the run game. To me, this is a mid-round guy. I've seen projections as early as the first round, which I don't love. If the Chargers were to take him in the third, I would get it. If they were to take him at the end of the second, I would kind of get it. Anything before that, kind of like, I don't love it, but this is something that could change. Like I said, the combine's coming, and this is a combine guy. He is absolutely going to raise his stock when they see how athletic he is, how smooth, how quick he is. To me, this is a really exciting prospect, albeit very confusing. So those are my top 5 right now. I do have an honorable mention. DJ Campbell, the right guard from Texas, number 52, 6'3", 343 pounds, senior from Arlington, Texas. This guy was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, which is no joke in Texas. He was a starter since his sophomore year. This guy never gets injured. That is so much time in college football to never get hurt. Scheme versatile, struggles with pulls because of limited speed, weaker pass protector. He kind of depends more on his size than technique. He often starts too high up and can't get his hands under the pads reliably. We saw versus Arkansas, it's hard for him to recover when he loses that leverage, but he's a great run blocker. I absolutely see him succeeding in both gap and zone schemes, which versatility, that matters. That's really important. He executes doubles, down blocks really well. He looks great in run blocking versus Georgia recently. Even in pass protection, he held up better than most of his teammates against Georgia in pass pro. This might be someone you could get for a later round, maybe in the 6th round even, depending on how people value some of those flaws. But I've seen people say as early as the 3rd, but I think when the dust settles, though, there will be too many better guards at that point in the draft. This to me makes sense as a swing guard, which is why I wanted to mention him. I think that would be a great pick for the Chargers if they can get him late enough. He needs development. He absolutely could develop into a starter. He has the traits, but his production hasn't been quite good enough that you want to project him as a starter. And if you're gonna use one of your first 3 rounds on an offensive lineman, you really on any position, you really want them to be a starter in their first year to get that value. That being said, 2 honorable mentions real quick: Kalen Rutledge out of Georgia Tech, and Armaj Reed Adams out of Texas A&M. I have not been as impressed with these 2 as most people have. Neither of them are in my top 10 right now, but I could see it happening anytime everyone else is way higher on someone than I am. I always think, okay, I'm gonna have to go back and look at the tape when the season's over, look at it all together and see what I'm missing. So let me know what you guys see in those guys and in everyone. Let me know who you feel like I'm missing from the top 5, who you are watching. Like I said, I really appreciated when you guys put some names of other centers to watch. We're definitely going to revisit this conversation. And, we're also looking for a swing tackle. Some of these guys that I'm projecting to move from tackle to guard. The Chargers also need a swing tackle, and that's something we got to look out for. So let me know what you guys think. That's going to do it for me talking about the draft. Really appreciate you guys being here. Please subscribe if you've liked what you've seen. I definitely have more draft content coming out soon. I'm most likely next going to be looking at defensive tackles. So feel free to drop some names of guys you want me to look at as well in the defensive tackle department, as well as edge rushers. I think there's a lot of things to be excited about on the defensive line in this upcoming class. Okay, so now I want to talk to subscribers real quick. Really appreciate how you guys have been watching and commenting on my videos. Appreciate the engagement. I have been getting a few comments asking about live streams and memberships, if those are things I'm going to do. I do plan on live streaming after the Raiders game next weekend. I'm hoping that I can have that figured out by then. If not, the next week, but that's the hope. I'll let you know for sure when I preview the Raiders. As for memberships, it's something I'm looking into. I'm not quite sure what I would offer. I was thinking all of my show notes that don't quite make the cut into the video, maybe the occasional film on some of these prospects. I have access to a lot of this film that I can't put on YouTube because of copyright, and obviously I'd make it so you can get all the draft content early, especially, in the off season. But let me know if that's something you're interested in. I'm not entirely sure. I know live streams have gotten some interest, so as soon as the Raiders game ends, I plan on going live, so let me know if that's something you're interested in, and I hope I see you guys there. I really appreciate you guys. Like I said, I'm almost at 1,000 subscribers, which is kind of wild to me, so thank you guys for that, and please like and comment, and I absolutely love reading through the comments, seeing what you guys think, especially with the draft. It is there are so many prospects, and it's so hard to evaluate the vast number of guys. So I really appreciate any insight that you guys have. It's definitely something I'm getting more and more interested in, especially, frankly, as the Chargers are kind of disappointing this year. The draft feels better and better to look at. I'll be back in a couple days to preview the Raiders game. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Cecilia, and this has been the Chargers Check-In. I'll see you guys next time.